Forget everything your history teacher told you because your sweet, innocent grandma was secretly running a backwoods criminal empire from her kitchen, and nobody warned you. She was doing things so wildly illegal today that the FBI would helicopter into her farmhouse before breakfast in 2026. We are talking homemade explosives, toxic chemical cocktails, underground meat smuggling rings, and survival hacks so unhinged they make modern preppers look like soft suburban amateurs. We hunted down 111 absolutely ridiculous off-grid tricks your ancestors pulled off daily, and half of these would get you locked up, fined, or possibly featured on a true crime documentary today. So smash that subscribe button like Grandpa smashed his dinner with dynamite, because your ancestors were straight-up outlaws living their best lives, and you had no idea. Stick around till the end because point 87 is so unhinged it might actually be illegal to watch. 1. Dynamite hand fishing was the redneck version of grocery shopping back in the day. Grandpa would stroll down to the river with half a stick of construction dynamite he probably borrowed from a quarry job, light that bad boy, and chuck it into the water like it was a frisbee. Boom! Suddenly, hundreds of fish were floating belly up, ready for the frying pan. Today, the feds would slap a felony charge on him faster than he could say catfish. But back then, the entire town just called it Tuesday dinner. 2. Kerosene throat gargles were Grandma's favorite cure for a scratchy voice in the Depression years. She would pour raw petroleum fuel into a coffee mug, dump in a heaping spoonful of white sugar, swirl it around, and tell little Billy to gargle it like mouthwash. The logic was simple. Bacteria hates gasoline, so problem solved. Modern doctors would faint at the sight, but Billy went right back to chopping wood by sundown. The whole family treated kerosene like it was Listerine with a kick. 3. Wild roadkill laundering was the Great Depression version of a secret underground supper club. Folks would spot a fresh elk smacked by a Model T on a back road, and within minutes, a whole network of neighbors descended like vultures in overalls. They skinned it, butchered it, and split the meat between 5 families before the game warden could finish his coffee. Grandma got the ribs. Cousin Earl got the antlers. The warden got nothing but tire tracks. 4. Crank telephone fish shocking was peak hillbilly engineering at its finest. Grandpa would rip the magneto generator out of an old wall-mounted phone, run wires straight into the local creek, and crank that handle like he was calling his mother-in-law. Suddenly, catfish were floating to the surface, completely stunned and ready for dinner. The whole family thought he was a genius. The fish thought he was the devil himself making an unscheduled long-distance call. 5. The Milk Crate Creek smuggler trick was straight out of a moonshiner's playbook. Uncle Jed would shove illegal venison into a heavy wire mesh crate, chain it to a rock, and sink the whole thing into a deep river bend. Game wardens could search the cabin all day and find nothing but biscuits. Meanwhile, the meat was just chilling underwater like a fishy hotel. Jed would tip his hat, smile real polite, and laugh his head off later. 6. Car battery water softening was Grandpa's way of saying chemistry class is for cowards. He would hook a tractor battery straight into the metal pipes of the home well, send raw DC current ripping through the water, and somehow strip the lime right out of it. The kitchen sink became an unmonitored science experiment. Grandma never asked questions. She just made coffee with the result and prayed nobody developed a glow-in-the-dark. 7. The road tar tooth sealant was the dental plan of choice for broke farmers everywhere. Grandpa had a rotted molar, throbbing like a drum, so he grabbed a scoop of boiling construction asphalt, packed it straight into the cavity, and called it done. No dentist, no bill, no questions. The nerve got sealed off from the air and he chewed jerky by sundown. Sure, it was slow chemical poisoning, but he saved $15, which felt like a fortune. 8. Automotive oil meat preservation was Grandma's weird flex during summer barn season. She would take clean, unused engine oil straight off the shelf, grab a paintbrush and slather it all over hanging hams like she was glazing a Thanksgiving turkey. Flies bounced right off. Air could not touch the meat. Cousin Earl walked in, sniffed the ham, and asked if the tractor was hungry. Grandma just smiled. The ham lasted all summer without a single bug landing. 9. The creek-driven log saw was Grandpa's unpermitted middle finger to the electric company. He built a water wheel-powered log splitter right inside the public river, hooked it to a saw, and let the current do all the chopping for free. The sheriff drove by once, scratched his head, and kept driving because nobody had a law for it yet. Grandpa cut 6 cords of firewood by lunch. The river just kept working overtime like an underpaid intern. 10. Lye-steeped corn transmutation was the witchcraft of the kitchen back then. Grandma would dump field corn into a giant pot of pure wood ash lye and boil it until the hulls melted right off. The result was hominy, which fed the whole family for weeks. The risk was horrific chemical burns if a single drop splashed on her arm. She just rolled up her sleeves, stirred the bubbling cauldron, and dared the lye to mess with her. 11. Blackberry root tea was the nuclear bomb of stomach medicine in the frontier days. When little Tommy got dysentery so bad the family thought he was a goner, Grandma marched out, dug up gnarled blackberry roots, and boiled them into a dark, bitter brew that tasted like fermented tree bark. Tommy gulped it with tears streaming down his face. Within an hour, his digestive tract slammed shut tighter than a bank vault. There was no Pepto. There was only Grandma and her angry roots. 12. Heating dense rocks on the coal stove until they practically glowed was Frontier Mom's central heating plan. She wrapped soapstone in wool blankets and slid them under the bed sheets where toes stayed toasty for hours. Today, the fire marshal would have a complete breakdown. Back in 1890, the only safety rule was, do not light the mattress on fire. Sometimes the mattress lost that battle. Insurance was just praying really hard. Half the county lost cabins this exact way every winter. 13. Backyard tanneries smelled like a forest had died and then died again. Old Henry Tucker would scrape raw animal skins clean, dump them into giant wooden vats packed with crushed oak bark, and let the whole disaster soak for weeks. Neighbors stopped visiting. His wife stopped breathing through her nose. The leather came out tough as iron and lasted 40 years. Modern factories use harsh chemicals to do this. Henry just used patience, oak trees, and severe permanent damage to his sense of smell. 14. Tying a cow to a public road bridge overnight was Farmer Bob's idea of free buffet service. His cow Bessie would munch through thick ditch vegetation while drivers honked and swerved around her hooves on the highway. No pasture rent, no grazing fees, just one annoyed cow blocking traffic and chewing aggressively at midnight. The sheriff sighed every single morning. Bob waved real polite from his porch. Bessie looked at everyone like she personally owned the bridge and the entire highway department. 15. Pouring high-proof corn liquor straight into a tractor radiator was the dumbest brilliant idea ever to come out of Appalachia. Earl Watkins took his finest moonshine, the same batch he sold to revenuers under a fake name, and dumped it into his clogged engine. Every mineral deposit dissolved instantly. The tractor ran like a champion. Earl's wife was furious because that was her cousin's wedding moonshine. Meanwhile, the tractor hummed contentedly, completely tanked, and plowed the straightest line in Tennessee history. 16. Industrial refrigeration before electricity meant burying cooked pork chops under 10 solid inches of hardened lard. Aunt Pearl mastered the technique by 1882. She slow-cooked the meat, dropped it into a giant wooden barrel, and poured melted lard right on top until it sealed into a greasy white tomb. 6 months later, she would chisel out a chop like an archaeologist on dinner duty. Cholesterol had not been invented yet. Nobody complained. Pearl just kept stacking barrels in the cellar like wartime ammunition. 17. Stolen railroad ties soaked in diesel made indestructible firewood that nearly killed entire families. Cousin Earl swiped a few from the train yard, marinated them in fuel for a week, and tossed them into the cabin stove like he was a genius. They burned forever. They also belched toxic creosote smoke that turned his ceiling black and made everyone cough like coal miners. The dog moved outside permanently. Earl insisted everything was fine. The doctor disagreed loudly when he finally arrived 3 weeks later. 18. Boiling a beaver tail down for hours produced pure oil that turned leather boots completely waterproof. Trapper Joe Hennessy swore by this trick across every Minnesota winter from 1901 onward. He slathered beaver grease on his work boots, and snow refused to soak in. Mud slid right off like he had Teflon feet. The downside was Joe smelled like a swamp creature for 2 solid weeks. His wife banished him to the barn. The boots outlasted 3 marriages and somehow looked brand new. 19. Pokeweed greens were straight up poisonous. which made Frontier Mom's spring salad a high-stakes gambling event. She picked young leaves, then boiled them exactly 3 times in fresh water to leach out the toxins before serving. One miscount meant the entire family clutched their stomachs by sundown. She never miscounted. The greens tasted like spinach having a personal crisis. The kids ate every bite because the alternative was scurvy, and the bigger alternative was disappointing her, which was somehow infinitely worse than dying slowly. 20. Scooping unpasteurized mud out of the local river and packing it 3 feet thick against cellar walls was Pioneer Pete's basement remodel from hell. The result was a steady 55-degree storage room that kept potatoes fresh all winter. The smell was unforgettable. The bugs were generous and uninvited. His wife refused to descend those stairs alone after sundown ever again. But those potatoes never froze, never sprouted, and never once asked uncomfortable questions about what exactly was crawling between the basement walls. 21. Driving copper rods 10 feet into the shallow water table near the house was Uncle Ray's brilliant lightning protection plan. He skipped every building code in the state, every safety inspector in 3 counties, and every ounce of common sense his mother gave him. When a storm rolled through Kansas in 1934, his cabin stood untouched while the neighbor's barn became a flaming crater. Ray sipped coffee on the porch, smug as a cat. The sheriff just stared. Nobody could prove anything illegal. 22. Imagine pulling a raw potato out of the bin, hollowing it out, dumping rock salt inside, and using that mess to keep your sourdough alive for months. That was Aunt Mabel's wild yeast factory. She would catch airborne yeast inside the tuber like a microbial trap. The dough rose every single morning. Visiting cousins thought she was a witch. Local pastors quietly avoided her kitchen. Mabel just grinned, pulled fresh biscuits from the oven, and refused to share her potato secret with anyone. 23. Coal dust briquette pressing was the side hustle nobody talked about at church. Folks would scoop up discarded coal dust from mining operations, mix it with starch and, yes, actual manure, then press the goo into illegal heating blocks. Farmer Wilson swore his cabin stayed warm for 16 hours on one brick. His wife refused to acknowledge what was burning. The smell was unforgettable. The savings were enormous. The county inspector pretended not to notice because his own woodshed had the exact same bricks stacked inside. 24. Rotting apples solved a problem nobody knew rotting apples could solve. When Grandpa's iron farm tools rusted into oblivion, he dumped them into a massive vat of fermenting apple pomace and walked away for 2 days. The natural acids ate the oxidation clean off. Tools came out shiny like new. Bees swarmed the property like Mardi Gras. The cows got drunk from sniffing the fumes. Cousin Earl tried drinking the vat juice once and saw God. Nobody let Earl near the apple barrel again. 25. A sharpened turkey quill became the family veterinarian's needle of choice in the back hills of Tennessee. Old Doc Henderson would hollow out a wild turkey feather, fill it with crude livestock medication, and jab it straight into a sick cow's flank. The cow lived. The turkey did not. Henderson's hands were steady as a rock from 40 years of moonshine production. He charged 2 eggs per injection. Real veterinarians 100 miles away would have called the law on him immediately. 26. Slapping local clay all over the inside of a thin metal wood stove sounds like sabotage. But for pioneer wife Martha, it was pure genius. She would coat the interior with mud from her own backyard, let it bake hard, and suddenly her flimsy stove radiated heat for hours after the fire died. Her husband thought she had lost her mind. The kids stopped complaining about cold mornings. Martha became the talk of the county. Other wives copied her trick within a single Wyoming winter season. 27. Scooping sediment straight from the bottom of the public river was Mr. Caldwell's signature move every spring. He would haul buckets of rich, unmonitored silt up to his cornfields and dump it like free fertilizer from heaven. The state had no rule against it yet. The fish were a little annoyed. His corn grew taller than the barn roof by July. Neighbors started copying him until the riverbed sat 3 feet lower than it used to. Nobody connected the two events for decades. 28. Elderberry bark had one job in the old days, and that job was to clear you out fast. Frontier moms scraped the bark downward off the bush, brewed it into a violent emetic, and handed it to anyone who ate questionable squirrel. Little Henry drank a cup once and discovered new dimensions of regret. The stomach emptied. The body shook. The cure worked. Modern doctors would call it horrifying. Pioneer mothers called it Tuesday afternoon. Nobody dared question her medical decisions ever again afterward. 29. Hollow logs stuffed with crushed charcoal turned swamp water into something almost drinkable. Pioneer settler Jacob Webb built one near his cabin in the Louisiana bayou and watched murky brown water drip out clear from the other end. Gravity did all the work. Bacteria stayed trapped inside the burnt wood. His family survived 3 summers of fevers that wiped out half the parish. Modern engineers studied the design centuries later. Jacob just shrugged and said, the swamp owed him for stealing his chickens twice. 30. Pig bladders blown up like balloons were the Tupperware of the 1800s. After butchering day, Aunt Greta would clean out hog bladders, dry them out for a week, and inflate them until they were airtight and waterproof. Valuable seeds went inside. Tobacco went inside. Once a kid found one and tried bouncing it like a ball at a church picnic. The pastor nearly fainted. Greta swatted the boy on the head with a spoon. The bladder survived. The pastor's faith in humanity did not. 31. Stacking tight straw bales against the outside walls of a house turned every Great Plains cabin into a giant hay sandwich. Settler Frank Goodwin pulled this stunt in Nebraska during the blizzard of 1888 when winds hit 40 below. The straw blocked every draft. The house stayed warm. Mice moved in by the thousands. Frank's wife discovered the situation in March and screamed loud enough to crack a window. Frank just shrugged and said the family survived winter. The mice survived too. Everyone won except dignity. 32. Driving sharpened iron pipes manually into the ground with a sledgehammer was Cousin Walter's idea of modern plumbing. He pounded interlocking pipes deeper and deeper until water finally bubbled up at 26 feet. His shoulders gave out twice. His back gave out 3 times. The well worked perfectly for 60 years. Modern drilling companies charge $5,000 for this exact job. Walter charged himself a 6-pack and a Saturday afternoon. His grandchildren still drink from that well today and call him a maniac. 33. Roasting chicory roots until they smelled like coffee was every Southern household's wartime survival hack. Mrs. Beauregard from Louisiana ground them down, brewed them in a tin pot, and served the bitter brown liquid to Confederate soldiers passing through. They drank it without complaint. They had no choice. Real coffee was taxed into oblivion or completely unavailable. The fake stuff tasted like burnt dirt mixed with regret. Soldiers said thank you politely and never asked for seconds. Beauregard considered this a personal victory. 34. Chewing on raw willow bark twigs was frontier schoolteacher Lavinia Hartwick's morning pain relief routine in 1872 Wisconsin. The bark contained natural salicin, basically aspirin before aspirin existed. Her headaches vanished within 30 minutes. Students thought she was chewing tobacco and snickered constantly. Lavinia ignored them and kept teaching. Bayer Pharmaceutical Company synthesized this exact compound in 1899 and made billions of dollars. Lavinia chewed sticks for free and died with a clear head. She never received a single penny in royalties from the chemists. 35. Stuffing dried corn husks into canvas sacks created mattresses that crunched louder than a popcorn factory. The Bishop family in rural Iowa slept on these things for 40 years straight. Every rollover sounded like somebody stepping on a bag of chips. Every sneeze sent dust clouds floating across the bedroom. Kids hated it. Parents pretended not to hear it. Cotton mattresses cost too much money in 1895, so corn husks won by default. Modern chiropractors would weep openly. The bishops just called it character building. 36. Melting smelly sheep. Fat into a wick dish was the lighting strategy that filled every cabin with black soot in 1860. Aunt Cordelia ran tallow dips through the entire Wyoming winter. Walls turned gray, curtains turned darker gray. Her white cat became a black cat permanently. Visitors would step inside and immediately start coughing like they had entered a coal mine. The light worked. The smell was unforgivable. Cordelia did not care because candles cost actual money, and sheep fat was free fresh. 37. Blending fine sawdust into wet cement was Carpenter Ben's secret recipe for stretching his materials further than legally advisable. His workshop floor in 1912 Michigan came out soft, slightly bouncy, and weirdly warm to walk on. Other carpenters laughed at him. Ben laughed back when his floor outlasted theirs by 20 years. The downside was termites considered his shop an all-inclusive buffet resort. He sprayed kerosene around the edges weekly. The floor and the bugs coexisted in an uneasy treaty until 1947 exactly. 38. Forcing children to chew raw wild garlic whole was every frontier mother's scurvy prevention plan. Little Susie Calhoun gagged through her ration every morning in 1844 Kentucky. Her breath could knock down a horse at 20 paces. School teachers seated her by the window permanently. Boys avoided her like she carried plague. She had perfect teeth, perfect gums, and zero friends throughout her entire childhood. Susie grew up healthy and bitter. Her mother considered the trade-off an obvious win. Susie disagreed loudly for decades afterward. 39. Massive boulders shoved under ironwood stoves stored heat like nature's radiators. Settler Hank Morrison lined his cabin floor with creek rocks, weighing 40 pounds each. The stove ran all night. The rocks soaked up every drop of warmth. Morning came, and the cabin still felt cozy hours after the fire died. His wife thought he was a genius. His back disagreed permanently after hauling those stones inside. Hank limped for a decade. The cabin stayed warm for 50 years. Worth it, allegedly. 40. Mixing shaved lead wheel weights into distilled spirits created the deadliest house paint in American history. Painter Clarence Doolittle slathered this toxic concoction across barn siding throughout 1923 Ohio. The paint sealed everything beautifully. It also slowly poisoned every farmhand who breathed near it. Symptoms included confusion, tremors, and forgetting your own name on Tuesdays. Clarence kept painting because the wood lasted forever. His clients kept hiring him because they had no idea what lead poisoning even was. The barns still stand somehow. 41. Burning green tobacco leaves inside a sealed greenhouse was Farmer Hollis Bates's organic pest control plan in 1908 Virginia. The smoke filled every corner with natural nicotine that paralyzed aphids on contact. Bugs dropped from the rafters like tiny corpses. Hollis stepped inside without a mask once and saw his dead grandmother waving at him from beside the tomato plants. He never tried that again. The aphids stayed dead. His tomato yield tripled. Modern pesticides are weaker. Modern pesticides also do not hallucinate grandmothers. 42. Stripping the inner green layer of poplar trees and boiling it into tea created a primitive aspirin substitute that actually worked. Granny Petunia Whitlock served this brew across 1856 Vermont whenever a headache struck. The bitter green sludge tasted like a swamp had been squeezed into a mug. Kids gagged. Adults pretended not to. The headache vanished within 20 minutes every single time. Modern buyer would have studied her recipe in horror. Petunia just smiled and offered seconds to anyone foolish enough to compliment her. 43. Boiling grease-stained work clothes in pure hardwood ash water was laundress Hetty Rourke's signature move on washing day. Her cauldron in 1872 Pennsylvania looked like a witch's brew, bubbling violently behind the cabin. The lye in the ash stripped every stain and most of the fabric too. Shirts came out clean. Shirts also came out 2 sizes smaller and full of mysterious holes. Husbands grumbled. Hetty shrugged. The clothes were technically clean. Detergent had not been invented yet. Complaints were dismissed without ceremony. 44. Burying giant blocks of frozen river water under 3 feet of compressed straw was ice merchant Ezekiel Cobb's summer business empire. He carved the ice in January, stacked it inside an underground vault in upstate New York, and sold chunks to wealthy New Yorkers all the way through August. 1 chunk equaled 1 week's wages. Ezekiel became rich. The straw smelled disgusting by July. Customers did not care because cold lemonade in summer felt like sorcery. Ezekiel retired wealthy with permanently frostbitten fingers. 45. Simmering horse hooves and knuckle bones for 3 straight days produced the strongest furniture glue known to 19th century America. Cabinet maker Silas Dunwoody from 1881 Connecticut filled his entire workshop with the most horrifying smell ever recorded by his neighbors. The whole town smelled like a slaughterhouse threw up. His chairs lasted 140 years. His marriage lasted 6 months because his wife refused to live in a glue factory. Silas chose the glue. The chairs survived. The wife remarried a baker, 46. Steeping pulverized dandelion roots in boiling water forced winter digestion back to life with extreme prejudice. Hard-working farmer Otis Penrose drank a quart every February in 1903 Indiana, when his stomach forgot how to function. The bitter yellow tea kick-started bile production within an hour. Otis spent the next morning sprinting to the outhouse repeatedly. His wife marked the calendar as Bile Day every year. Modern detox influencers would charge $60 for this exact recipe. Otis paid $0 and regretted everything anyway. 47. Smearing fine creek clay into split cast iron skillets was camp cook Bertha Salinger's emergency repair trick during the 1849 gold rush. Her crew of 49ers needed bread every morning, and her cracked skillet was the only option. She packed clay into the split, baked the pan over hot coals, and produced perfect biscuits like nothing had happened. The miners ate without questioning anything. Bertha sold those biscuits for $1 each. The skillet survived 3 more gold camps before finally retiring from active duty. 48. Constructing meat lockers packed with 3 feet of loose wood shavings was Butcher Cornelius Tibbets's summer preservation system in 1894 Maine. He stored entire deer carcasses inside double-walled rooms that stayed cold from sawdust insulation alone. No electricity, no ice, just lumber waste doing the job. His customers were amazed. His competition went bankrupt. Cornelius dominated the local meat market for 30 years until refrigeration arrived. He died wealthy and smelling faintly of pine. His warehouse still stands today, weirdly cold and creepy. 49. Blending ruined chunky raw dairy with slaked lime created the brightest white barn paint anyone had ever seen. Farm wife Adelaide Pickerton mixed it up in 1887 Missouri and slathered it across her husband's barn. The structure gleamed like a beacon for miles. Travelers used it as a landmark. Birds bounced off it confused. Adelaide became briefly famous for inventing barn paint from spoiled milk. Modern paint manufacturers would call it primitive. Modern paint also costs $40 a gallon. Adelaide paid nothing, 50. Steeping fresh evergreen tips in boiling water yielded a sour ascorbic tonic that crushed scurvy in 1 cup flat. Trapper Bo Lambert depended on this routine through every brutal 1869 Alaskan winter. The drink tasted like Christmas tree, had a personality disorder. His teeth stayed firmly attached. His gums never bled. Other trappers laughed at him until their own teeth started falling out one by one. Bo just sipped his spruce tea and watched them weep. He outlived all of them by 20 years. 51. Heating dry riverbed sand in a cast iron pan until it nearly glowed was wagon train. Cook Mabel Threadgill's emergency hypothermia treatment in 1853 Wyoming. She poured the scorching sand into canvas sacks, pressed them against frostbitten feet, and brought half-dead pioneers back to life by sundown. The sand stayed warm for 6 hours straight. Travelers wept with gratitude. One man kissed Mabel's boot. She kicked him gently. The trick saved 17 lives that winter alone. Modern heating pads cannot compete with angry desert sand. 52. Rubbing fatty animal brains into raw rabbit skins sounds like a horror movie. But for Trapper Mose Calloway, it was Tuesday afternoon in 1881 Montana. The brain matter emulsified the hide perfectly, creating windproof mittens that lasted decades. His workshop reeked of warm gray matter. His wife refused to enter the shed for any reason. Mose just kept smashing brains into pelts with a wooden mallet, whistling cheerfully. The mittens became famous across 3 counties. Nobody who bought them asked how they were made. 53. Boiling stringy wild ginger root systems immediately stopped abdominal cramping from tainted meat in 1864 Appalachia. Frontier doc Filbert Stoddard prescribed this brew to half his patients without ever attending medical school. The bitter tea worked within 10 minutes. People with food poisoning got back on their feet in time for chores. Filbert collected eggs and chickens as payment. He became wealthy by mountain standards. Real doctors 50 miles away got jealous. Filbert just kept boiling roots and pretending he understood actual medicine. 54. Dusting unrefined cornstarch heavily across inner thighs prevented bloody chafing during 14-hour harvest days in 1899 Kansas. Field worker Hiram Bickerstaff swore by this routine every August. His pants would explode in clouds of white powder whenever he sat down. Co-workers thought he was leaking flour. The chafing stayed away. The dignity also stayed away. Hiram did not care, because by sunset his legs were not bleeding through his trousers. Modern athletes use fancy products. Hiram used kitchen ingredients and a complete lack of shame. 55. Mixing fine river silt with dried field grass produced heat-resistant mortar that built chimneys for free. Mason Wendell Crabtree assembled flues across 1875 Tennessee without spending a single penny on commercial brick mortar. The chimneys held up perfectly under blazing wood fires for decades. His competitors went bankrupt. Wendell laughed all the way to the saloon. The trick stayed his closely guarded secret until his deathbed confession in 1916, which he made to a priest who immediately wrote it down and sold it. 56. Crushing green walnut husks in boiling water created a dark toxic wash that turned wood-boring beetles into refugees. Carpenter Eustace Pomeroy painted his entire 1892 Ohio barn with the brew. Beetles fled in droves. The wood lasted 70 years. His hands turned permanently brown from handling the stuff. People mistook him for a much tanner man across 3 counties. Eustace did not bother correcting anyone. The stain refused to wash off no matter what soap he used. His funeral portrait still shows brown fingers. 57. Slathering warm goose fat across the throat was Grandma Estelle Ravensby's heroic congestion treatment in 1907 Wisconsin. She rendered the bird grease herself, smeared it across her grandchildren's necks, and wrapped them in flannel scarves before bedtime. The fat trapped body heat. Lung congestion broke up by morning. The pillowcases became unsalvageable. Estelle replaced linens monthly without complaint. Her grandchildren survived every winter cold she threw at them. They also smelled like Thanksgiving leftovers for 3 days straight after each treatment session ended. 58. Bundles of coarse wild horsetail reeds scrubbed cast iron pans cleaner than any modern steel wool ever could. Homesteader Lucinda Frostwick gathered armloads from the creek every spring in 1878 Arkansas. The reeds contained natural silica that ground grease away effortlessly. Her skillets gleamed like obsidian. Neighbors begged her for the secret. Lucinda charged them eggs in exchange. She accumulated 300 chickens through pan-scrubbing tutorials alone. The chickens started laying eggs. She traded those for land. Lucinda eventually owned the entire creek bottom. 59. Grinding cold fireplace charcoal into fine powder was every 19th century person's idea of a luxury toothpaste. Saloon piano player Reginald Twillerton in 1885 Colorado kept a tin of the stuff beside his bed. He scrubbed his teeth with it nightly. His smile gleamed white through the saloon haze. Women swooned. Men suspected witchcraft. Reginald just kept grinding burnt wood and pretending it was a normal hygiene routine. His teeth outlasted 3 pianos. Modern dentists actually approve of this method now, which feels deeply suspicious. 60. Spreading unpasteurized wild honey directly onto deep flesh burns sealed wounds tighter than any modern bandage. Frontier widow Cordelia Pinkston survived a kitchen fire in 1862 Georgia by slathering honey across her own scorched arms. The wound never got infected. Skin grew back smooth within weeks. Her doctor was speechless. Cordelia just smiled and pointed to her beehive. Modern hospitals rediscovered this trick in the 1990s and acted like they invented it. Cordelia would have laughed herself sick if she had lived to see it. 61. Stuffing sphagnum moss directly into deep axe wounds was lumberjack Cap Wozniak's emergency first aid system in 1903 Minnesota. The bog moss absorbed blood like a sponge soaked in coffee. It also killed bacteria naturally because nature is weird like that. Cap stopped arterial bleeding on 3 different co-workers using nothing but moss and prayer. Hospitals 200 miles away could not have done better. Modern military medics actually copied this trick during World War I. Cap died old, rich, and still smelling faintly like swamp. 62. Mixing industrial yellow sulfur into pure animal fat created a pungent yellow paste that suffocated mites within minutes. Farmer Ezra Hooton slathered it on his itchy children every spring in 1888 Alabama. The smell could clear a barn at 50 paces. Mites died instantly. The kids smelled like rotten eggs for 3 weeks straight. School teachers banished them to the back row permanently. Ezra did not care because nobody was scratching anymore. His wife refused to sleep in the same bed as him until April. 63. Scattering crushed spearmint leaves across root cellar floors was homemaker Velma Cuthbertson's rodent eviction plan in 1894 Vermont. The strong aroma drove mice straight out the door without a single trap. Her cellar smelled like a candy factory exploded inside it. The winter grain sacks survived untouched. Visitors thought she was running an illegal mint distillery. Neighbors copied her trick and ran out of wild mint by midsummer. Velma started selling dried mint bundles for profit. She accidentally invented an industry without realizing it. 64. Scraping sticky wax directly off unwashed sheep wool sounds like a punishment, but for Shepherd's wife Hattie McGarrigle, in 1879 Idaho, it was beauty regimen gold. The raw lanolin healed her split bleeding winter hands within days. Her skin became softer than a baby's cheek. City women begged her for the secret. Hattie just pointed at the sheep and laughed. Modern cosmetic companies charge $50 an ounce for this exact substance now. Hattie scraped it for free and never once thanked the sheep. 65. Crushing acidic tree galls with rusted iron square nails produced jet black permanent ink that lasted centuries. Schoolmaster Phineas Whitcomb manufactured this stuff in 1855 New Hampshire for every student in his one-room classroom. The recipe came from medieval monks somehow. His ink-stained desks, fingers, and clothing forever. Mothers complained constantly. Phineas ignored them and kept brewing. Documents written with his ink are still legible today in county courthouses. Modern ballpoint pens fade in 20 years. Phineas's gall ink is basically immortal, apparently. 66. Dropping decomposing carp heads directly into hand-dug crop mounds was Farmer Jebediah Snodgrass's fertilizer plan in 1872 Iowa. The rotting fish delivered concentrated nitrogen straight to young corn plants. His fields stunk like a coastal town in August. Crows gathered for the buffet. Neighbors held their noses and walked the long way around. Jebediah's corn grew 9 feet tall. He won the county fair 3 years running. His wife refused to attend the ceremony because the trophy somehow still smelled like dead carp years later. 67. Stripping fuzzy cattail seed heads from marsh plants gave coatmaker Beatrice Hollins all the insulation she needed in 1891 Maine. She stuffed canvas work vests with the buoyant fluff and sold them to fishermen for $2 each. The vests kept men warm in freezing water. They also functioned as accidental life preservers. 3 sailors survived shipwrecks because their cattail coats refused to sink. Beatrice became a local hero by accident. The fishermen built her a statue out of guilt. Cattails proved smarter than wool. 68. Reducing wild rose hips into thick sugary syrup was apothecary Wilhelmina Drumheller's wintertime bronchitis cure in 1898 Pennsylvania. She bottled the dark red potion and sold it for a nickel per spoonful. The vitamin C levels were absurdly high. Coughs vanished within days. Children begged for extra doses because it tasted like jam. Wilhelmina rationed strictly because too much rosehip caused other problems she preferred not to discuss publicly. The syrup recipe still survives in modern herbal books. Modern herbalists charge $60 per bottle. 69. Pressing warm, wet cornmeal cakes over infected splinters drew the wood right out of the skin in 1881 Tennessee. Country healer Maybelle Pickett used this trick on lumberjacks across 3 counties. The cornmeal poultice softened skin and pulled deep splinters to the surface within hours. Loggers traveled for days to reach her cabin. She charged 1 chicken per splinter. Maybelle accumulated so many chickens she had to build a second coop. Modern emergency rooms charge $600 for splinter removal. Maybelle charged eggs. 70. Soaking slightly graying meat in sour mash washes was Frontier Saloon. Cook Bartholomew Higgins's questionable food safety system in 1869 Missouri. The acetic acid killed surface bacteria before stewing. Customers ate his beef stew and lived to tell about it. Most of them. A few mysterious cases of food poisoning got blamed on bad whiskey instead. Bart's cooking was technically functional. His ethics were not. Modern health inspectors would have shut him down within minutes. The 1869 health inspector did not exist yet. Bart kept cooking. 71. Melting sticky pine sap with animal fat created a waterproof tar that sealed every hole in a sheet metal roof. Tinsmith Augustus Pickering applied this gooey mixture across 1886 Oregon during the rainiest autumn on record. The roof stopped leaking overnight. The cabin smelled like a Christmas tree forest mated with a butcher shop. His wife threatened divorce twice that week. Augustus pointed at the dry kitchen floor and won the argument. The seal lasted 40 years. The smell lasted approximately 3 months longer than anyone expected. 72. Working hot, unrefined cattle fat into the welt stitching of leather boots was bootmaker Cyrus Halverson's spring mud survival kit in 1893 Wisconsin. He greased every seam until the leather practically dripped. Farm boys walked through swamps without getting wet socks. Cyrus charged $5 per treatment. His shop reeked like a tannery had a baby with a slaughterhouse. Customers held their breath for the entire visit. Nobody complained because their feet stayed dry. The boots outlasted 3 generations of feet in many families. 73. Peeling oily paper-thin sheets off fallen white birch trees gave camping guide Wilford Bickerstaff perfect fire starter material during a 1907 Maine downpour. The bark ignited even when soaking wet. His tourist clients thought he was magical. He charged extra for fire-starting demonstrations. One wealthy New Yorker paid him $20 just to watch flames appear in the rain. Wilford retired early by 1915. He spent his remaining years drinking coffee on a porch and laughing at city folks who could not start fires without gasoline. 74. Grinding fresh yarrow leaves into a wet mash stopped severe bleeding within seconds of application. Frontier midwife Prudence Dalrymple packed yarrow into a gunshot wound across 1864 Texas and saved a cowboy's life. The blood coagulated almost instantly. The cowboy lived to ride another 40 years. Prudence became legendary across 3 counties. Word spread so far that Confederate medics started carrying yarrow in their field kits. Modern emergency rooms still use yarrow-based products without realizing where the trick came from originally. History keeps repeating itself. 75. Cooking kitchen frying fats with caustic wood ash. Runoff produced harsh, skin-stripping soap that doubled as paint remover. Settler Hortense Bellamy boiled this stuff in 1877 Kentucky and bathed her family with it weekly. The kids came out clean and slightly red. Their dead skin came off in sheets. Bath night was treated like a medical emergency. Hortense considered this acceptable. Modern dermatologists would weep openly at the practice. The kids grew up tough and strangely shiny. Nobody ever caught lice in that household. 76. Braiding dry corn husks into dense, solid logs was farm boy Thaddeus Crumley's fast-igniting firewood alternative in 1881 Indiana. He twisted them so tight, the logs burned for 30 minutes straight. His mother saved a fortune on real wood. Thaddeus turned husk braiding into a side business by age 12. He sold bundles for a penny each and made enough money to buy his first horse by 14. The horse hated the smell of corn husks for some reason. Thaddeus never figured out why exactly. 77. Baking a thick layer of smooth river mud across the neck and face prevented blistering during long field clearings in 1858 Mississippi. Field worker Obadiah Vexley wore mud like sunscreen all summer long. His skin stayed pale beneath the crust. Co-workers called him Swamp Face behind his back. Obadiah did not care because his neck never burned. Modern dermatologists recommend SPF 50 sunscreen now. Obadiah used SPF Mississippi River. The results were technically equivalent. He lived to 92 years old without a single skin cancer. 78. Consuming massive amounts of wild field garlic was mountain trapper Linus Babcock's tick repellent strategy across 1896 Tennessee. The sulfur compounds seeped through his skin and made ticks literally jump off his body. The smell could fell a deer at 50 paces. Linus became a legend among trappers. Bears even avoided him. His wife banished him to the porch for entire summers. Linus considered this a fair trade because no tick ever bit him again. He died at 104 years old somehow. 79. Placing massive boulders of unburnt coal inside potato storage bins was greengrocer Reuben Mottershead's deodorizing trick across 1899 Pennsylvania. The coal absorbed rot gases and damp smells better than baking soda ever dreamed. His potatoes stayed fresh through April. Customers were astonished. Reuben sold his trade secret to a New York grocery chain for $50 and retired immediately. The chain used coal in their cellars for decades. Modern refrigerators do the same job now. Reuben still got the better deal financially anyway. 80. Harvesting fresh, pliable willow runners from creek banks gave basket weaver Henrietta Trembleworth all the material she needed to build heavy-duty carrying crates in 1873 New York. She wove crates strong enough to haul 50 pounds of apples without snapping. Customers paid her $3 per basket. She had a 6-month waiting list by 1875. Metal crates cost more than 5 times as much. Henrietta cornered the entire upstate market with nothing but creek branches. She died wealthy. Her great-granddaughter still weaves baskets today. 81. Hanging wide-mouthed jars filled with fermenting apple cider in orchards was orchard keeper Silas Wetherington's pest control invention in 1885 Washington state. Fruit flies dove into the sweet trap by the thousands. They drowned blissfully drunk. Silas emptied jars weekly and refilled them with fresh cider. His apple harvest doubled. Neighbors copied the trick within months. Modern sticky fly traps cost real money. Silas paid in spoiled cider he was going to throw out anyway. The flies died happy. The orchard survived. Everyone won except the flies. 82. Packing freshly laid, unwashed eggs into barrels of dry salt crystals was henhouse boss Permelia Catchpole's 6-month preservation system across 1879 Ohio. The salt drew moisture out and locked the eggs into suspended animation. She cracked one open in April that was laid in October, and the yolk still held its shape perfectly. Visiting cousins refused to eat it. Permelia ate it herself just to prove a point. Modern refrigeration was decades away. Permelia did not need it. Her chickens fed her family year-round. 83. Hammering dried livestock bones into granular meal was farmer Tobias Quackenbush's secret to rock-hard eggshells in 1891 Indiana. He fed the bone meal to his laying hens every morning. The shells became so strong his kids could not crack them without a hammer. Egg sales tripled because customers loved the durability. One egg survived a 3-foot drop onto the floor unbroken. Tobias became famous for his iron eggs. A traveling reporter wrote about him in 1893. He never figured out the article was actually mocking him. 84. Chewing broadleaf plantain weeds into a wet pulp and pasting it onto hornet stings was child wrangler. Aunt Hepzibah. Lockwood's pain relief routine in 1882 Vermont. The swelling went down within minutes. Kids stopped screaming. She kept plantain growing in pots beside the cabin door for emergencies. Modern bug spray costs $10 per can. Hepzibah used a free weed growing in her yard. She treated 40 stings in one summer alone. Her saliva was somehow considered medicinal by every cousin within walking distance. 85. Dusting fine dry hearth ash across dirt floor cabins was settler wife Lucretia Bogsworth's flea extermination plan in 1864 Tennessee. The ash dehydrated jumping insects and killed entire populations overnight. Her cabin floor turned gray. Her shoes turned grayer. Visitors tracked ash everywhere for weeks. Lucretia did not care because she could finally sleep without scratching. Modern flea bombs cost $20. Lucretia paid $0. The ash also bleached her dog accidentally. He stayed slightly white in patches for years, afterward looking permanently confused. 86. Tucking fresh walnut branches into horse leather rigging kept biting stable flies completely off draft teams in 1899 Ohio. Wagon driver Bartleby Hornswoggle swore by this trick on every long haul. His horses pulled smoother because nothing was biting their ears. Other drivers thought he was a genius. The branches needed replacing every 3 days. Bartleby kept a fresh supply rolled up under his seat. He never lost a horse to fly-induced panic. His competitors lost 3 horses that same summer alone. Walnut won. 87. Explicitly using spoiled curdled raw milk as a leavening agent was pioneer Mother Drusilla Snippett's biscuit science in 1856 Missouri. The sour milk reacted with baking soda and made dough rise without yeast. Her biscuits came out fluffy as clouds. Guests asked for the recipe constantly. Drusilla refused to share because the explanation involved actual rotten milk. People would have been horrified. The biscuits tasted incredible regardless. Modern bakers still use buttermilk for the same chemistry now. Drusilla just used whatever was going bad fast. 88. Positioning 2 flat creek stones for manual grinding was settler Cassius Underbridge's grain mill across 1858 Arkansas. He ground field corn between the stones by hand for 3 hours every morning. His arms became absurdly muscular. Local women noticed. Cassius accidentally became the most eligible bachelor in the county. He married twice before realizing it was the muscles drawing attention. Real grain mills cost a fortune. Cassius spent nothing. The stones outlasted him. His grandkids still grind corn with them today out of pure stubbornness. 89. Seething dried red clover blossoms into a dark beverage soothed chronic winter coughs across 1903 Pennsylvania. Country healer Esmeralda Worthington brewed this tea for every consumptive farmer within 20 miles. The bitter dark liquid loosened deep chest congestion within hours. Patients paid her in chickens, butter, and the occasional gold tooth. Esmeralda accumulated wealth quietly. Modern cough syrup is just chemicals pretending to be plants anyway. Esmeralda used the real plants directly. Her recipe book was buried with her, which everyone considered tragic and rude. 90. Suspending salted meat slabs over low continuous hardwood fires for 2 solid weeks was smokehouse operator Mordecai Twilling's curing process in 1887 Kentucky. The hickory smoke penetrated every fiber of the meat. Hams came out dark, salty, and indestructible. They lasted years without refrigeration. Mordecai sold them across 3 states by mail order. His ham became legendary. Modern grocery store ham is a sad imitation. Mordecai's recipe still exists in family hands. They refuse to publish it, probably because it involves 2 weeks of work. 91. Coating strips of heavy brown shopping bags with boiled sorghum molasses was country storekeeper Ambrose Fitchett's flytrap invention in 1894 Georgia. The sticky strips hung from every rafter in his general store. Flies landed and never left. Customers gawked at the carnage above their heads. One strip caught 200 flies in a single afternoon. Ambrose sold his sticky strips for a nickel apiece on the side. Modern fly tape exists because of guys like Ambrose. He never patented the idea. Big mistake, apparently. 92. Rinsing hair with weak fermented apple juice was saloon singer Magnolia Beauchamp's beauty secret in 1888 Louisiana. The cider stripped away the sticky alkaline film left behind by harsh, homemade lye soap. Her hair shone like polished copper under stage lights. Cowboys threw silver dollars at her performances. Magnolia refused to share the trick with rival singers. She let them keep their dull, frizzy hair while she earned 3 times their wages. Modern shampoo companies sell apple cider rinses for $30. Magnolia paid pennies. 93. Nesting 2 earthenware pots with damp river sand between them was desert trader Cornelius Pemberton's evaporative cooler invention in 1872 Arizona. The pot setup dropped internal temperatures by 20 degrees through evaporation alone. He kept milk, butter, and meat fresh in 110-degree weather without electricity. Travelers paid him to store their food. Cornelius accidentally invented an early refrigerator. Modern engineers studied the design and patented modified versions for African aid programs. Cornelius got zero credit. He died wealthy but unknown. History forgot him quickly. 94. Drying and burning fuzzy mullein leaves. To inhale the medicinal steam was mountain healer Beulah Snarklefoot's bronchitis treatment in 1899 West Virginia. Patients gathered around her smoking pot and breathed deeply for an hour. Lungs cleared dramatically. Coughs vanished within days. One man swore he coughed up something resembling a small frog. Beulah politely ignored him. Mullein still grows wild on her old property today. Modern herbalists rediscovered the trick. They sell mullein cigarettes for $15 per pack now. Beulah just picked her own. 95. Dissolving heavy amounts of mineral rock salt into warm well water was dentist wannabe Festus Krangleworth's mouthwash recipe in 1881 Wyoming. He treated abscessed gums for cowboys who could not afford real dentists. The salt water flushed infections out within days. Festus had no medical training whatsoever. His patients survived anyway. He charged $0.25 per treatment. Real dentists 300 miles away got jealous. Festus eventually became a real dentist by 1895 through pure stubborn experience. His license arrived in the mail and shocked everybody locally. 96. Packing fresh wilderness game inside charred hollowed logs was frontier trapper Jubal Hardcastle's spoilage prevention trick during 1869 Montana hunting trips. The charcoal inside the log absorbed moisture and slowed bacteria growth dramatically. His venison stayed edible for days during long packouts. Other trappers lost half their meat to rot. Jubal lost none. He guarded his secret jealously. Eventually, his nephew spilled it at a saloon in 1882 while drunk. Jubal never spoke to that nephew again. The trick spread across the Rockies within months. 97. Shaving prickles off mature blackberry vines and twisting the fibrous skin into heavy ropes was backwoods crafter Zachariah Plumtree's cordage operation in 1877 Arkansas. The ropes held 200 pounds without snapping. He sold them to homesteaders for a dime each. Manila rope cost 5 times that price. Zachariah cornered the local market completely. His hands looked like he had wrestled a porcupine for 40 years. The prickles never fully stopped scratching him. He considered the bleeding fingers an acceptable cost of doing business. 98. Using raw moonshine to clean interior glass panes was saloon owner Decimus Halliday's window cleaning hack in 1883 Kentucky. The high-proof grain alcohol evaporated without leaving streaks. His saloon windows sparkled like crystal. Customers could see the bar perfectly from outside. Sales increased dramatically. One desperate patron tried drinking the cleaning bucket once. He survived but lost his eyesight for a week. Decimus banned him from the saloon permanently. Modern Windex contains alcohol for the exact same reason. Decimus just used the unfiltered version straight. 99. Dumping white calcium hydroxide powder down pit latrines was outhouse maintenance specialist Eulalia Throckmorton's odor neutralization method across 1894 Indiana. She charged farmers $1 per outhouse and made house calls in a horse cart with 3 barrels of lime. Ammonia smells vanished. Flies disappeared. Outhouses became almost tolerable for the first time in human history. Eulalia ran her business for 30 years and became known as the Lime Lady. Modern porta potties use the same chemistry. She invented it accidentally through sheer disgust. 100. Laying crushed mustard seed. Mashed between cloth layers and pressing it against the chest was country mom Elmira Bickerstaff's pneumonia treatment in 1898 Missouri. The heat-generating poultice broke up deep lung congestion within hours. Patients sweated buckets and coughed productively. The mustard burned skin red if left too long. Elmira watched the clock carefully. She saved 5 family members from pneumonia that brutal winter alone. Modern doctors use actual antibiotics now. Elmira used a condiment. The success rate was apparently comparable somehow. 101. Ringing crop beds with a thick perimeter of stove ash was vegetable gardener Petronilla Wagstaff's slug warfare strategy in 1886 Oregon. The ash dehydrated slugs the second they tried to cross. Bodies piled up around her cabbage patch like a tiny battlefield. Her harvest doubled. Neighbors started begging for her secret. Petronilla sold buckets of ash for 50 cents each. She accidentally turned fireplace waste into garden gold. Modern gardeners use diatomaceous earth for the same effect. Petronilla used what nature already burned for free. 102. Stuffing bedding ticks with sun-dried pine needles was innkeeper Bartholomew Crispin's bedbug prevention trick in 1879 Maine. The natural turpentine aroma drove bedbugs straight out of every mattress in his roadside inn. Travelers slept like babies for the first time in weeks. His reviews spread by word of mouth across 3 states. Competing inns lost business fast. Bartholomew never explained his secret. Modern hotel chains spend thousands on pest control. Bartholomew spent $0. His mattresses also smelled like Christmas, which guests found weirdly comforting. 103. Soaking peeling infected feet in warm apple cider vinegar was country foot Dr. Eunice Pinkston's trench foot cure across 1903 Pennsylvania logging camps. The acidic bath killed deep tissue fungal blooms within days. Loggers walked into her cabin barely able to stand and walked out healed within a week. She charged $2 per treatment. Modern athletes' foot creams cost 10 times more. Eunice cornered the lumberjack market completely. Her cabin smelled like a salad dressing factory, had a fight with a podiatry office permanently afterward. 104. Mixing dark chimney soot into rendered sheep fat produced incredibly slick waterproof wagon grease in 1891 Wyoming. Wheelwright Obadiah Crumpworthy slathered this black goo onto axles across half the territory. Wagons rolled smoother, wheels lasted twice as long. His grease stained everything within reach, including his own beard, which remained permanently gray-black until the day he died. Commercial axle grease cost a fortune by comparison. Obadiah made his version for pennies. Modern petroleum grease replaced it eventually. Obadiah's version was probably more environmentally friendly. 105. Whipping fresh, stinging nettle stalks across arthritic joints was mountain healer Erasmus Pottersby's pain management therapy in 1888 Kentucky. The sting triggered massive blood flow to the area and numbed nerve pain for hours afterward. Patients screamed during treatment and thanked him profusely once it ended. Erasmus charged a chicken per session. He accumulated 400 chickens by 1895. Modern doctors prescribe pills now. Erasmus prescribed agony followed by relief. The success rate was reportedly excellent. The patient satisfaction during treatment was reportedly terrible. 106. Slicing thick, spongy pith from inside mature sunflower stalks was backwoods fisherman Roscoe Halliburton's bobber-making hobby in 1872 Mississippi. The pith was light, water-resistant, and floated perfectly for hours. Roscoe carved hundreds of bobbers every winter and traded them for tobacco and whiskey. Bass fishermen across the Delta swore by his floats. Commercial cork bobbers cost 20 cents apiece. Roscoe's bobbers cost 2 cents. He cornered the entire river market by 1880. His great-grandson still has one of those original bobbers framed on a wall. 107. Eating raw pumpkin seeds whole was frontier mother Pansy Whitlocker's parasite purge plan for her 7 kids in 1894 Indiana. The natural cucurbitacin compounds paralyzed internal worms and expelled them within a day. The kids did not enjoy the experience. Outhouse visits became theatrical events. Pansy considered this medical progress. Modern dewormers contain synthetic versions of the exact same compound. Pansy used the original plant. Her kids survived. Their parasites did not. The pumpkin patch behind the cabin produced unusually well for the next decade. 108. Simmering second-year burdock taproots into a bitter beverage was country herbalist Tabitha Cogglesworth's skin-clearing tonic in 1899 Vermont. The brew induced heavy sweating and somehow cleared acne, boils, and mystery rashes within weeks. Teenagers across 3 counties drank her foul-tasting potion. The taste reportedly resembled wet socks blended with disappointment. Tabitha sold bottles for 15 cents. She accumulated enough to buy her own farm by 1905. Modern detox drinks cost $40 and do less. Tabitha made tea from a weed and prospered. 109. Boiling high-tannin white acorns into an astringent bath was livestock farmer Bertram Higgleston's saddle sore. Treatment for horses in 1881 Wyoming. The acorn wash cleaned infected wounds and prevented further bacterial growth dramatically. His horses healed 3 times faster than the neighbors' animals. Bertram became the unofficial horse doctor of the territory. He charged $2 per treatment plus acorns extra. Modern veterinarians use antibiotics. Bertram used oak trees. The success rate apparently matched. His secret recipe died with him in 1924, which felt criminal. 110. Kneading leftover blackboard chalk dust with flaxseed oil produced a durable window putty that sealed glass into rough wooden frames in 1885 Ohio. Schoolhouse janitor Ferdinand Wickersham invented this hack accidentally while sweeping his classroom one afternoon. He noticed chalk and oil bonded into a clay-like substance. He sealed every window in the building with it. The putty lasted 40 years. Modern window glazing costs $30 per tube. Ferdinand made his version from janitorial waste. He retired wealthy from selling buckets of recycled chalk paste. 111. Boiling golden seal root fibers into an intense yellow liquid was frontier eye doctor Mehitabel Crumble Snatch's crusty infection cure in 1894 Tennessee. The bright yellow wash flushed bacterial eye infections out within days. Patients arrived nearly blind and left seeing clearly within a week. Mehitabel charged 3 eggs per eye. She accumulated enough chickens to start her own poultry farm by 1898. Modern antibiotic eye drops cost $20 per bottle. Mehitabel used a wild plant root. Her cure rate was suspiciously high considering she had 0 training. And there you have it. 111 reasons your ancestors should have been arrested on a daily basis. Your grandparents survived dynamite, kerosene, road tar, and enough lead poisoning to kill a small horse, and somehow they still lived long enough to complain about your generation being soft. Honestly, the real survival trick was just being too stubborn to die. If this video taught you something your history teacher was too scared to mention, smash that like button so hard your screen feels it. Hit subscribe to Dumb History because we dig up the dumbest, weirdest, most unhinged stories America tried to forget. And drop a comment telling me which trick you would actually try, and which one would send you straight to the emergency room. Your great-grandma is watching from heaven, probably gargling kerosene, and she wants you to subscribe. See you in the next one.